So this is the Khoodeelaar television channel broadcasting at 0840 GMT on Thursday, the 2nd of March 2023. This is the day after the anniversary of the 1st of March 2006 Khoodeelaar rally against the Tar Hamlets Council, complicity, collusion with the big business corrupt plot for digging a hole in the middle of Brick Lane, London E1. We held that big rally outside the Marlbury Place at 1800 hours, I think, would be GMT on Wednesday, 1st of March 2006. And as we said before, the local member of parliament at the time for the constituency of Bethnal Green and Bow, where Brick Lane is situated, the member of parliament at the time was a man called George Galloway. On that basis, we invited him, not just him, but others holding elected positions in the name of the area, constituents, wards in the case of councils. But George Galloway took his time and kept us waiting for too long, which is what he does. George Galloway shows no respect to the local people. He's completely callous and disrespectful to the people. So it was ironic to find that he had called it, his outlet, the Respect Party, which is a joke. And the Respect name was stolen from a video shop in Hanbury Street that had called itself Respect for at least 2, 3, 4 years before anyone in Tower Hamlets, ordinary population, had ever even heard of George Galloway. So Galloway came 40 to 50 minutes late, or even maybe an hour late. But we let him speak, and we didn't put him under the spotlight by condemning his disrespectful late arrival and no expression of apology on his part. George Galloway is one of the most offensive individuals that our campaign has come across, and is the most offensive member of parliament, so called, that we had any dealings with. But we allowed him. We allowed him the platforms. Many times we gave him the platforms to save his skin politically. Especially, for example, in January 2006, when he was ill-advised, but he was greedily appearing on the Channel 4 Big Brother House, celebrity, whatever. And that was the one opportunity that Tony Blair, who was as Prime Minister and the leader of the Labour Party at the time, had kicked George Galloway out of the Labour Party under any pretext. Whatever pretext the war criminal Blair used to justify his ousting of Galloway from the Labour Party membership was a joke. It was an insult. It was a lie in itself. Any excuse would have done, because Tony Blair wanted to get rid of George Galloway and get rid of him as fast as he could, and he did. When George Galloway lost the Labour Party membership, and he was not a member of parliament anymore after the 2003 election because Galloway, who had been an MP for constituencies in in Scotland, after he lost the Labour Party membership, Galloway lost whatever support he had as a Labour Party member before in Scotland, so he failed. So, sometime after that, he obviously got a rare kind of victory from the High Court, Queen's Bench Division, ruling in favor of him and against the Daily Telegraph Group in a defamation action that Galloway had taken against the Telegraph Group. What was the actual detail of that defamation action? Let's see. So, this was the report. The Guardian website has this item, this particular item, with the qualifier that this article is more than 17 years old. Galloway versus Telegraph, published and damned. And this was Wednesday, 25th of January 2006, 09:10 hours GMT. While George Galloway lost his public appeal in the Big Brother House, he will be glad that it was the Telegraph that lost its legal appeal against the libel ruling he won in 2004. With legal costs of 1.2 million and damages of £150,000, the newspaper, that is the Telegraph's determination to test the boundaries of the human right to free speech in relation to libel defenses has not come cheap, writes Edgar Forbes. That is the piece in the Guardian referring to Edgar. The paper's appeal, that is the Telegraph's appeal, was based on what it put down to a misunderstanding by Mr. Justice E.D. in the High Court. The Telegraph claimed that he had not differentiated between fact and comment. It suggested that because the judge did not like for exposing the facts, that Galloway would be defamed by what the Telegraph originally published was never in doubt or disputed. The Telegraph found documents that implicated Galloway for from a corrupt regime. There was no realistic way of proving were they would indeed be in the interest to know about. To this extent, the Telegraph was justified in publishing their contents. What was at issue was whether the Telegraph could rely on these documents to claim defense of qualified privilege. The answer here, under the Reynolds test for qualified privilege, they could, but only insofar as their comment on the document was fair. What the Court of Appeal's judgment makes clear, and which reinforces the approach adopted in the High Court, is that when it comes to deciding whether comments are fair or in the public interest, there will be minimal acceptance of journalistic license. In other words, the scope of the defense of fair comment attaching to qualified privilege is extremely narrow. Whether in arriving at their decision, the Court of Appeal's acceptance of this narrow interpretation amounts to a breach of the Telegraph's right to free speech remains to be seen. Well, there is no such thing as right to free speech in this country. This is the thing. But anyway, that is the discussion after the Telegraph lost the appeal against the original defamation case. Let's go to the original defamation case. Let's go to the other page because we are trying to access that and we are not getting access immediately. So let's see if we can find the other route. And it says George Galloway the Telegraph. That's the so let's check the one on the appeal. This is the neutral citation number. The case number is A2 stroke 2005 stroke 0308. Royal Courts of Justice, Strand, London, WC2A 2LL, dated the 25th of January 2006. And this is an appeal by the Telegraph, I think, yes. Is it Sir Anthony Clark, MR, Master of the Rolls, Lord Justice Chadwick, and Lord Justice plural. Between George Galloway MP, claimant, respondent, and the Telegraph Group Limited defendant, appellant. Rampton QC and Heather Rogers instructed Devonport Lions for the claimant, that is Galloway, and James Price QC and Matthew Nicklin instructed by Deckard for the defendant. Hearing dates 11 and 12th of October 2005. Now, this is the summary in the appealing. Anthony Clark, Master of the Rolls. This is the judgment of the court, George Galloway. George Galloway is a well-known member of Parliament. In this action, he sued the Daily Telegraph, or strictly the Telegraph Group Limited, and he sued them for damages, yes, for libel, on the ground that he was defamed in its editions of 22nd and 23rd of April 2003. The action was tried by EDJ without a jury, and on 2nd of December 2004, Justice ED handed down a lengthy judgment running to 218 paragraphs. He held that the articles complained of were seriously defamatory of Mr. Galloway. The judge noted that the Daily Telegraph did not seek to justify the defamatory statements as true, and he, the judge, held that none of them was protected either by the privilege at common law, whether under the principle in Reynolds versus Times Newspaper Limited, which was a decision in 2001, or otherwise, or by the defense of fair comment. Justice Easy ED awarded damages of £150,000. Justice ED refused permission to appeal. Permission was subsequently refused on paper by Keed LJ, but was granted by Tuckey and Latham, Lord Justices Tuckey and Latham, after verbal arguments on 18th of April 2005. In this appeal, it is accepted on behalf of the Daily Telegraph that the articles were defamatory, but it is said that they were protected by privilege and that they were no more than fair comment, so that newspaper is not liable. Alternatively, Alternatively, it is said that the damages were excessive. Okay, so the articles, and there are references and quotes. It is impossible to set out in this judgment the whole of the material published on 22nd and 23rd of April, which is relevant or potentially relevant to the issues between the parties. However, we will set out the key parts of it in much the same way as the judge did. There are four articles complained of in the issue of 22nd April. The first was on the front page under the heading Galloway was in Saddam's pay, says secret Iraqi documents. Underneath appeared three bullet points, subheadings as follows: Labour MP received at least £375,000 a year. The second one is the cash came from oil for food program. And the third one is papers could have been forged, he says. The article is attributed to Mr. David Blair in Baghdad. The whole of the article is complained of, but the judge, in our view, correctly formed the view that the flavor of the article is sufficiently conveyed by the introductory paragraph. And the introductory paragraph is quoted by this judgment is George Galloway, the Labour backbencher, received money from Saddam Hussein's regime, taking a slice of oil earnings worth at least £375,000 a year, according to Iraqi intelligence documents found by the Telegraph in Baghdad. A confidential memorandum sent to Saddam by his spy chief said that Mr. Galloway asked an agent, that the agent of the Mukhabarat secret service, Mukhabarat secret service, for a greater cut of Iraq's exports under the oil for food program. He also said that Mr. Galloway was profiting from food contracts and sought exceptional business deals. The second article complained of is also in the 22nd of April edition on page 3. It is headed The Go Between and the Loyal Ba'athist Supplied Saddam with Weapons. Again, the article is attributed to Mr. Blair in Baghdad. It is introduced as follows: George Galloway, Jordanian intermediary, has a family history of loyalty to Saddam Hussein, Hussein's Ba'ath party, according to his Iraqi intelligence profile. Fawaz Abdullah Zureikat, 53, would clearly be an ideal choice to conduct any business dealings with the Iraqi regime. His Mukhabarat secret service profile, attached to the intelligence chief's memorandum to Saddam's office on Mr. Galloway, refers to him warmly as a sympathizer with Iraq. And it goes on. As the judge observed, that is the original trial judge, the article continues with a brief description of Mr. Zureikat's background and business activities. It also refers to him as Mr. Galloway's representative in 2000, and to his company having been mentioned in one of the documents found as a front for Mr. Galloway's business dealings in Iraq. And then it goes on, quoting, it says, for years, Saddam Hussein abused the United Nations Oil for Food program to fund Iraq's own illegal activities and reward the regime's favored friends. The embargo may have been designed to contain Saddam, but several loopholes allowed him to earn billions of pounds in illegal revenues through oil sales. The papers found in Baghdad suggest that George Galloway, through his associates, was granted two kinds of deal. The first was the right to buy Iraq's oil under the Oil for Food program at concessionary prices and sell it on a profit. The second was to sell food and perhaps other civilian supplies to Iraq. And the fourth article complained of in the issue of 22nd of April 2003 consisted of a leader headed Saddam's Little Helper, which was the only leader published in the Daily Telegraph that day. The judge identified the flavor of the article as appearing in the first three paragraphs. Quote, it doesn't get much worse than this. George Galloway is Britain's most active and visible peace campaigner. The Labour MP for Glasgow, Kelvin, did not just oppose the recent campaign against Saddam Hussein, he lobbied equally aggressively against the first Gulf War and during the years in between for an end to sanctions. Yesterday, the Daily Telegraph's correspondent in Baghdad, David Blair, unearthed papers dealing alleged payments, detailing alleged payments from Saddam's intelligence service to Mr. Galloway through a Jordanian intermediary. There is a word for taking money from enemy regimes: treason. What makes this allegation especially worrying, however, is that the document suggests that the money has been coming out of Iraq's oil for food program. In other words, the alleged payments did not come from some personal bank account of Saddam's, but out of the revenue intended to pay for food and medicine for Iraqi civilians, the very people whom Mr. Galloway has been so fond of invoking. Speaking from abroad yesterday, Mr. Galloway was reduced to suggesting that the whole thing was a telegraph forgery, but the files could hardly be more specific. One memo comments his projects and future plans for the benefit of the country need financial support to become a motive for him to do more work. And because of the sensitivity of getting money directly from Iraq, it is necessary to grant him oil contracts and special commercial opportunities to provide him with a financial income under commercial cover without being connected to him directly. In the 23rd April issue of the Daily Telegraph, there is more coverage of Mr. Galloway's activities. Again, we take the description of it principally from the judgment. On the front page, there is a large photograph of Mr. Galloway alongside a poster of Saddam Hussein. Above the photograph, alongside one another, there are three bullet point headlines. Telegraph reveals damning new evidence on Labour MP, bluster, two homes, and the unanswered questions. Tory party Donna is named as key partner in oil contracts. Underneath those bullet points, but still above the photograph, there is a headline in large bold type which reads, Memo from Saddam. We can't afford to pay Galloway more. Mr. Galloway again makes four complaints about the 23rd of April issue. They relate to articles on the front page, to a headline across the top of pages 2 and 3, to an article on page 3, and to an article on leader page. Article or leader page on page 25. Sorry, read that again. I'll read the whole paragraph again. Mr. Galloway again makes four complaints about the 23rd of April issue. They relate to articles on the front page, to a headline across top of pages 2 and 3, to an article on page 3, and to an article or leader on page 25. The front page article is again attributed to Mr. Blair in Baghdad, and the judge identified these key allegations in it. So these are the key allegations as identified by the trial judge. Saddam Hussein rejected a request from George Galloway for more money, saying that the labor backbenchers' exceptional demands were not affordable, according to an official document found by the Telegraph in Baghdad. The letter from Saddam's most senior aide was sent in response to Mr. Galloway's reported demand for additional funds. This was outlined in a memorandum from the Iraq intelligence chief disclosed in the Telegraph yesterday. So let's go back and read the rest of it. I'm sorting out the display arrangements so that I can access them. The letter from Saddam's most senior aide was sent in response to Mr. Galloway's reported demand for additional funds. This was outlined in a memorandum from the Iraqi intelligence chief disclosed in the Daily Telegraph yesterday. That was the 22nd of April 2003. Mr. Galloway denies receiving any money from the regime. Saddam was rejecting two specific requests allegedly made by Mr. Galloway, as recorded in the intelligence chief's memorandum. The first was for a greater share of the profits from oil exports. The memorandum said that Mr. Galloway was already receiving between 10 and 15 cents per barrel of 3 million barrels exported every 6 months, an annual sum of at least 375,000 pounds. Mr. Galloway's second reported request was for exceptional commercial and contractual opportunities with three ministries, and the State Electricity Commission. These requests for more sources of income fell on deaf ears, but Saddam's decision not to allow them did not apply to Mr. Galloway's existing deals. Before Saddam issued his rejection, Mr. Galloway sent his work program for 2000 for the year 2000 to Mr. Aziz. The headline, which forms the second complaint, reads MP in Saddam's pay defends himself from 250,000 villa in the Algarve. The third complaint is the article appearing on the right hand page, etc. etc. Now let's go right to the end of this particular ruling, because we are not going to read the whole of this ruling, but we are reading so what we are looking at, we're going to the actual end of this particular ruling, yeah? Okay. Okay, this is the conclusion, the paragraph 94. In summary, the crucial features of this case are these. The judge held that parts of the issues of the 22nd and 23rd of April 2003 were seriously defamatory of Mr. Galloway, especially insofar as they alleged that he had taken money from Iraq for personal gain. The Daily Telegraph did not at any stage seek to justify those defamatory statements as true. It defended the action only on the basis of privilege and fair comment. The judge rejected both defenses. He was, in our judgment, right to do so. It follows that the appeal on liability must be dismissed. We also dismissed the appeal on damages for the reasons given above. So, this is the most historic statement made by the Court of Appeal about George Galloway, supporting him. Amazing irony. But this is absolutely the basis on which George Galloway, this appeal being rejected against the Telegraph, that was an additional bonus that George Galloway actually needed to make his various claims about being vindicated while he was campaigning in Tower Hamlets, where he, of course, on the 5th of May 2005, he got elected as the candidate for the Respect Party for the Bethnal Green and Bow constituency. But since Galloway got elected there, as soon as he got elected there, let's say, Galloway's ego received a boost that was uncontrollable because that was May, and then few months later, he must have negotiated with the Channel 4's prostitute program called Big Brother House. Endemol. I gave the name Endemol, which is Endemol, the prostitute program that was making the program for Channel 4 broadcast. And Galloway became greedy. And he went to the Big Brother house where he completely got exposed as a totally embarrassing feature. With Rolanenska, he was doing all kinds of things. I'm not going to even refer to those in any kind of detail, except to say that when he went to the Big Brother house, Galloway totally unexpectedly, he could not have expected that, gave Tony Blair, the man who actually ousted him from the Labour Party in Glasgow, Kelvin or whatever the constituency. And Blair sent his kind of thugs to Tower Hamlets to lobby the local Labour Party and the local community and condemn George Galloway for abandoning the constituency and going to the Channel 4 program. The steam was getting really, really hot. And what happened was Galloway's so-called supporters in Tower Hamlets, based in Tower Hamlets, or who had based themselves in Tower Hamlets after his election, went quiet. Now I'm addressing them today. I'm saying that all of you liars, you complete racist cunts who were supposedly working for Galloway, have remained quiet for all these years, you shits. It was the Khoodeelaar campaign that actually started the intervention. And we started the intervention against Blair, not for Galloway. It was the intervention against Blair which I made on 17th of January 2006 in a speech I first made in the Hanbury Street, because we were doing street demonstrations on the 17th of January 2006. In that speech, I said that we supported the local elected constituency MP. Now, up to that point, nobody, including the curious Ajmal Hussain, were silent. And as soon as he mentioned George Galloway, the local MP, and we support him or his rights as against Tony Blair, who was still Prime Minister, suddenly Ajmal Hussain began to wear expressions that showed he had blood in his body. Otherwise, he had gone cold, as had done all the other creeps that were supposedly part of the crew of George Galloway's in the constituency. That was the moment when we started the reversal of Tony Blair's assault on George Galloway. And after he left the Big Brother house, when he was ousted, Galloway spoke to one of the local Bangladeshis, and he confessed that he was absolutely unable to justify any of his behavior, and Galloway was in tears, as that particular Bangladeshi told me at a meeting I organized with him in the Bethnal Green Road. So Galloway was one stop before he was pushed out of the constituency, because there would be a recall election. If we hadn't intervened, if the Khoodeelaar campaign had not intervened, if I had not intervened, Galloway as the MP would have been a goner. So let me remind George Galloway that he never, ever did anything for me, anything for the constituency, anything for the community whatsoever. And he lied, and he colluded with the crooks operating from the base in East London Mosque. Those crooks had nothing to do with the local community. They never had before, and they never had since. What those crooks are doing is acting as parasites. Remember the role that the Sisters Forum played in brainwashing Sharmina Begum and telling her that if she wanted to meet her mom, who had died and whom Sharmina was terribly missing, Sharmina had one option. The best option, this Sisters Forum said, according to the entries now deleted on the Wikipedia, saying words to the effect to Sharmina Begum that if she went to Syria, if she joined the ISIS and committed suicide or became a suicide bomber or something, then she would go to heaven. She would die and she would go to heaven, where her mom would be waiting for her, or words to that effect. Now, Sharmina Begum and the other three girls are the topics that Galloway has not talked about, not as far as I can see. And yet, Galloway, in the current issue of Private Lie, has written a letter. The letter is about, let's see the letter. The first letter in the Private Lie of what date? 3rd of March to 16th of March. Private Lie issue number 1593. And the letter's pages start on page 22. The main letter, this first letter is about Private Lie cover itself, but the main substantive reader letter, if you like, is the main one is by George Galloway, from George Galloway, and another one supporting him generally and condemning Private Lie is somebody called A.L. Edmonds. We are reading the whole of this letter appearing in George Galloway's name. Rallying cry, that is the heading. Once upon a time, long ago, Private Eye would have deplored the denial of public platform to elected and former parliamentarians and British ambassadors. And it says the quote within brackets, no to Galloway, HP sauce I-1592, especially when the cancellations were brought about by an onslaught of increasingly intimidating emails and social media posts, unprecedented in our, my emphasis, that is Galloway's emphasis, recent history. A quote you falsely attributed to the organizers, but in fact, the words in writing of Conway Hall themselves. The rally goes ahead on 25th of February in central London as planned. We shall see if a minimum of 8 people turn up. Now, that is the rally that was supposed to have been held at Conway Hall under the banner of No to NATO. Apparently, that's a platform that Galloway has been involved in setting up. The point is that practically there is no way that this can get any momentum whatsoever. NATO is not going to be kind of diminished, undermined, deterred, etc., because anything Galloway is doing. I mean, NATO is a, how shall I say, the most substantial military kind of power. I mean, only comparable with China, America, that is USA, and Russia itself. But the fact that he actually is involved in a thing with that kind of ambitious slogan shows that Galloway has no relationship with the reality of society in Britain. If he had, he would have done something not of that magnitude in terms of the target, because taking on NATO is much bigger than taking on the UK Home Office. But he has not done anything to focus on the racism in the policy that Sajid Javid applied against Shamima Begum when he took away Shamima Begum's British by birth nationality, citizenship. Now, Shamima Begum went to a school which is in the constituency that George Galloway claimed for 5 years to be his. And by all descriptions, we don't know the exact home addresses of the other 3 girls, Sharmina Begum and Amira Abbasi or Khadija Sultana. But the school is in the constituency, but so if Galloway had any concern for the rights of these children, he would have made a comment, but he hasn't. And the silence on the part of George Galloway is not accidental. The silence on the part of Galloway about these 3 girls, 4 girls, is not accidental. We shall come to that in a minute. We're checking again the Armed List Council's website, as we do regularly, in order to see if they've changed their policy and posted anything about these girls. So we check the name Shamima in the search box on the Tower Council website. And it says your search for Shamima returned zero results. That's the routine. Then, secondly, we check Shamima Begum with a narrow focus on the search term or the search query. And it will say the same thing. It says your search for Shamima Begum returned zero results. But if we then move to the word Begum only, then it produces a different result, which is 52 results, as was the case yesterday. So the number of items on the Town Council's website has not changed since yesterday. Then we search safeguarding children. So that is the main three-word paragraph that is relevant in the citations. We say safeguarding children duty. Your search for safeguarding children duty returned zero results. Then we use the plural. Safeguarding children's duty and see what Town Council website says. It says the same thing. Safeguarding children's duty returned zero results. Then we change the duty to duties with the plural and see what it says. And it says your search for safeguarding children's duties returned zero results. Now, as we have said in the last, what, 6, 7 calendar years, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So the calendar years, this is now ninth calendar year since the three girls, Shamima Begum, Amira Abbasi, and Khadija Sultana were featured in the mainstream media in Britain as having crossed into Syria. So the first thing that was most pertinent and relevant, because those children on that date, February 2015, were children, and they remained children for several years after that. So we asked the question, the most common sense, lawful, constitutional, ethical, democratic question that would arise in context on the topicality as well was what was the local Farmers Council, which is the local council for all these girls, doing to safeguard these children? And we were connecting the safeguard to the alleged brainwashing, grooming, trafficking, whatever. Because if these girls were being safeguarded, if Tower Hamlets Council was applying its duties owed to these girls, then these girls would not have been trafficked, groomed, radicalized. Happened. And none of these preventative measures happened. And what did the Prevent program do? The Prevent program, from which Tower Hamlets Council received probably £2 million. £2 million from the UK central government to do the prevent activities, presumably preventing the likes of Shamima Begum, Sharmina Begum before her, Amira Abbasi, and Khadija Sultana from becoming radicalized or even connected with the groomers and radicalizers. The money was received, but the money was never applied to safeguard these children. And the money was not applied to prevent encroaching the radicalization, the grooming onto the lives of these girls. So, of course, we shall be continuing. And we note here that on the internet, there are increasing numbers of people who are kind of getting encouragement after, especially after the reported detailed kind of speech made by a UK government advisor, Jonathan Hall, expressing the opinion that Shamima Begum should be allowed to return home. That there are other people who are writing and expressing comments along the same lines, which they didn't do until Jonathan Hall spoke. They didn't do even before. So we are noting the trend, and we shall be continuing to keep an eye on what is happening. Again, we say that our main focus is and remains and will remain on the failure, the negligence, and the criminality perpetrated by Tower Hamlets Council before and being perpetrated even now by its operation of the policy of denial on its website about the existence of Shamima Begum and the existence even of the legal duty or duties to safeguard the children. That shows a detailed deliberation on the part of the corrupt, criminally active Tower Hamlets Council to deny its legal duties owed to children like Shamima Begum, Amira Abbasi, Khadija Sultana, and before them, Sharmina Begum, before meaning 3 months before that. Because Sharmina only went through the intervention or the encouragement of the so called Sisters Forum operating from the base in the East London Mosque in late 2014. We are going to, I think we are going to end this particular edition at nearly 54 minutes, and the time on the clock is 09:34 GMT on Thursday, the 2nd of March 2023. We shall follow in due course in the coming editions.